We will now move forward with the annual session of Sportscom Industry Confederation. It is my pleasure to welcome on stage our chief guest, Srimati Sujata Chaturvedi, Sports Secretary, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India. Can we have a round of applause for ma'am, please? I am also pleased to welcome on stage Mr. Vivek Singh, Senior Vice President, Sportscom, Mr. Vidushpat Singhania, Treasurer, Sportscom, Mr. Rishikesh Joshi, Secretary, Sportscom. Request to give a huge round of applause for our distinguished guests, please. A very warm welcome to our eminent dignitaries. Thank you for joining us today. Now, may I please request Mr. Vivek Singh to felicitate our chief guest. Thank you. Without further ado, we would now like to proceed with the session. May I request Mr. Jalaj Dani, President Sportscom, to say a few words. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. I want to just very briefly extend a very warm welcome to Madam Secretary. From the time we have interacted with her in Shastri Bhavan, she has been an ardent supporter. She has been an ardent supporter as far as the whole business of sports is concerned. And that's what Sportscom stands for. And today, in spite of her other pressing engagements, she is with us today. Thank you, Madam Secretary, and I'll hand it back to my colleague Vivek. Thank you.
Thank you, Jalaj. Madam Secretary, Srimati Sujata Chaturvedi ji, friends and colleagues on this panel, especially Virendra Gupta ji from the Confederation of Indian Industry. We are gathered here at the 5th Annual General Body Meeting of Sportscom. Ma'am, as you well know, Sportscom has been at the forefront of doing things to facilitate the entire ecosystem of sport, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's sports management, or sports advocacy at the highest level. You, ma'am, have been a wonderful torchbearer for us, and you have always given your time, your guidance, your inputs without hesitation and without reservation. And for that, on behalf of the entire membership of Sportscom, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much. The list of accomplishments of Sujata ma'am is long. And she will tell you a little bit more when she speaks on the good news that we've had today and how on target we are at the Asian Games, which is the largest sporting showcase in this entire region, which is the most populous region of the world. But what is close to my heart is that Sujata ma'am hails from Maharashtra, my home state. And I'm sure she can speak better Marathi than I can, for sure. She's also a postgraduate in history from Nagpur University, and also an MPhil, a master's in philosophy in public administration, and a diploma in Russian language. Very few people know this. She's conversant in Hindi, English, Urdu, Russian, besides Marathi, which happens to be her mother tongue. Ma'am, it is wonderful, and with your permission, we would request you address us first, and then we have a few points on the agenda that we want to take up with you and take your guidance and take your direction on the way forward.
Namaskar, a very good afternoon to all of you. Jalad ji, Vivek ji, others on the dais, friends who are sitting in the audience, my colleague Vimal. It is a pleasure to meet all of you today. I think the last time we interacted was in virtual mode because of the pandemic. After that, this is the first time that we're meeting. Right. So glad to be meeting all of you in person. It's good to be back to the normal times. And as we speak, we have had 2 golds this morning at the Asian Games. This morning. And our medal tally has now gone to 20. We won some bronze and silver today, so 20 medals so far. And naturally, we are all happy, but on tenterhooks as well, because we have a long list of things to come. And we are hopeful that our kids will do well in many other things. So I was just sharing with friends here when I was coming that I'm almost at the fag end of my very long service now. And yet I feel like these kind of events are my report card, where if the kids do well, we feel happy. And if there are some disappointments, I personally feel as if I've not done something enough. So that's the power of this sports world, and victories and triumphs and disappointments are a part of it. Excitement is never stopping in the department, and we're always into one action-packed event to another. If I were to rattle off what we're going to do in the next few months, I'm sure you will be breathless. Back to back with the Asian Games, we have the Para Games are coming up. As soon as we finish the Para Games, we have the National Games at Goa. Thereafter, we have many more Khelo India Games lined up. The youth games are happening in Tamil Nadu. The university games are happening in Assam and Northeast. And like that, it will go on till we reach Paris Olympics. So you can see that the calendar is completely booked with many events which are, not as big, but they're part of the whole calendar. So it is a very exciting time, and you are probably aware that the IOC session, the meeting of the IOC general body and the executive board is happening in Mumbai in the middle of October. So that's again a very prestigious event for India. We're doing it after 40 years. So all in all, a very action-packed kind of time for us, and we are happy to do our bit. In terms of what we do with Sportscom, I personally feel that we have some constraints, and we are trying to help with whatever support and means that we can. The subject matter is part of the mandate of DPIIT. I think the secretary or somebody from DPIIT is going to talk to you. I have been trying to do my bit. I have been trying to support. And wherever there is a need to give some advice, or wherever there's a need to, lobby or do some kind of advocacy, we are actively doing that. And I can also surely on your behalf say that we are probably not doing as much as you would like us to. But there are some constraints which we operate with. And in terms of our commitment, the department's commitment, even our Honorable Minister, who is an eminent sports person himself, he is also very committed to your larger cause. And we will do our best and continue to do our best. What I would like this group to consider is that you keep supporting sports and keep working for the betterment of sports to the best possible extent that you can. Because that is a pious job that we have to do. Otherwise, the kind of challenges that our sports people face are too big and enormous for them to, overcome personally. The challenges that we see on a day-to-day basis, which the young people face, we try to solve, we try to help. But then, there are difficulties, and we are not able to do enough. Insofar as the department is concerned, we don't have a very large department. I think you know that. We have a limited HR capacity, and we try to handle all the action and all the work that we do. But all the work that we would like to do in terms of helping out on the industry side will require a larger department, and that also we are trying to work on. That also I am trying to do something about, and hopefully we will also get some results very soon. So those are the things that I would like to talk about. And in terms of the general overall commitment of the government to sports, you can see that things are very different now from what they used to be. I have many senior athletes who have got medals for India in the past coming to me and telling me that the kind of support that now they get, the young ones get, they had never even imagined. I mean, very, very small interventions that we have made, such as, I was very happy to see the girls who got gold medals today, because before we reach the stage of departures and all, I have made it a practice that I personally talk to these athletes over video conferencing. So I'm happy that I have spoken to our gold medalists earlier. And we try to talk to them at our level so that if there's anything that we can do, we are able to help with that. So that kind of interaction, they told me, has never happened before. And we send teams for their departures. We send teams to receive them when they come back. And we are able to intervene at every stage. So I think that is also adding to the overall feel good, where somebody who has played for India feels honored and proud. Even if they don't win medals, it's not about winning a medal, it's about being able to wear the Indian jersey and go and play for India. So that kind of culture is coming up, and that will surely be very beneficial in the long run, where the young people will feel encouraged to play different types of sports. In fact, if you have followed the Asian Games medals, it is an amazing diversity of medals. I mean, yesterday was historic, where we won a medal in equestrian. So that has never happened in the last 4 decades. Then today we have won medals in shooting. So like that, if you are winning medals in very, very different types of sports, that also goes to show that your sports, strength is deep now. It's not just 1 or 2 sports that you specialize in. So that also shows that the preparation and the culture of sport is now taking roots in the right way that we want it to. So all in all, it's a very good atmosphere, a very good time. I do not deny that there are many challenges. We will meet them with all your help and support. So I wish this gathering here all the best. I wish you all success in your individual endeavors, and look forward to a great sporting nation, which is our country. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Ma'am, running a marathon is my business. I think you're running an ultra marathon till Paris 2024. The kind of agenda that you have set is quite stunning, ma'am. And, all strength and support to you and your department and the ministry, which is doing such wonderful work. What we are going to do today, ma'am, we're going to set a bit of context. And then we have 3 or 4 issues which require your attention, your direct intervention. And we want your guidance on them. And then we're going to request our membership, whether they are online or they are present here, to ask whatever questions come to their mind, so that we can have a truly interactive and a truly engaging session with you here. So, ma'am, Sportscom's intent is to build an inclusive platform for sports manufacturers, sports infrastructure developers, sports service providers, stakeholders, and media representatives to work on research-based issues and advocate for investments in sports through maximizing business participation. We also intend to build capacity for the different players in the ecosystem and be a knowledge hub for sharing best practices and promoting sports culture in India by advocating for mainstream fitness and sports initiatives in schools and institutions. To this, we had partnered and worked very closely with the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports to support the Fit India initiative. As you are well aware, we also have a memorandum of understanding to collaborate with the National Sports Development Fund in working towards structuring and increasing policy advocacy for the benefit of the sports sector in India, including increasing its outreach and overall impact. Sportscom facilitates NSDF's activities in streamlining the sports development landscape of the country through policy advocacy initiative, also to work together to improve the sporting landscape in India and develop the Indian sports ecosystem. Our immediate priorities, and ma'am, I know, like you correctly said out there from the podium, there are many issues, but our immediate, we've listed four, and I'm going to request my colleagues here on the dais, Vidushpa, Rishikesh, to also join me. There are four issues, and with your permission, I would like to take them up with you. Ma'am, the first issue that we feel that needs addressal is the reverse charge mechanism issue, which you are familiar with. Just to give you context, ma'am, why this issue is something that sponsorship is the main driving force for sport and sporting events in India. Without sponsorship, unlike the West, without sponsorship, we cannot have a sporting event. Ticket-based sporting events also depend on sponsorship for their success. The government, in its wisdom, a few years back decided that sponsorship would come under reverse charge mechanism, thereby putting a great burden on the sports promoter. And we've actually given the actual breakup as to how even the sin tax that is there in this country is 28%, but if you want to be a sports promoter, you will have to shell out 34%. Ma'am, we've also not just come up with an issue, we've come up with a solution. And what our humble request to the Government of India and the Ministry of Finance is that when body corporate speaks to body corporate, the tax could be on forward charge. And if it's not body corporate, if it's any other entity, which could be a single person startup or a body that's not registered as body corporate, then the government can continue with reverse charge. When we sat down with officials from the Ministry of Finance, we realized that their pain point was the fact that they felt that most people in the sports industry do not constitute body corporate, and therefore there would be a leakage in the tax collection. So when we explained to them that if it's body corporate talking to body corporate, then we are governed by the corporate rules and there will not be a leakage. So ma'am, this is for your consideration and for you to guide us as to how we can meet with the right people in the Ministry of Finance under your auspices and have this. And I feel this will cut across the ecosystem of sport. From the biggest players to the smallest players will benefit, because without sponsorship, ma'am, in India, sports cannot grow. So that was our one humble request. If you permit us, we will move forward. But if there's any thoughts you have, yeah.
I'm just listening to what you're telling me. I'm aware of some of the issues. We will definitely be looking at these things. In fact, we had taken up the matter of some issues with taxation earlier, and we will continue to take it up. There is no problem.
So here, madam, Sportscom has thought it through in the sense that the government there should not be leakage of revenue, and yet there should be a benefit to the industry.
Yes.
And that is why Sportscom has taken this to present this to you, that we've actually thought it through, ma'am, that without any...
Do you have a database of people who are registered corporates, like you said? The impression is that it's mostly unorganized and therefore the RCM. So do you have some sort of database which we can share?
We can find that, ma'am, but the policy, the way it has been thought through by our experts, and of course your decision, will be that irrespective if you're registered as body corporate, it is forward charge. And ma'am, they did this for the security agencies.
Okay.
In January...
No, the idea of RCM, I used to be in charge of
Yes,
GST when
yes,
it
ma'am.
came about. The idea of RCM was essentially about unorganized,
Yes,
unregistered.
We felt
That is how it was put in place in the first place.
We felt that, ma'am, from the ministry officials also.
If we get some data, then it is better to
Yes,
discuss. It's
yes, ma'am.
useful to discuss it with some data.
And ma'am, the Ministry of Finance notification number 29, effective 1st January 2019, gave relief to the security services
Right.
industry on a similar basis.
Right.
So whereby they said, okay, if it's body corporate talking to body corporate, then it can be on forward charge. Otherwise, it can continue as reverse charge.
All right, okay.
So there is also a precedent here, ma'am, for whatever help that happens. May I?
Yeah, please carry on.
Ma'am, another issue very close to Sportscom's heart and something that will be a game changer for the entire sporting ecosystem in India. And I'm going to request my colleague Vidushpat Singhania, ma'am, to come in here. It is to increase the scope of sports in Schedule 7 of the CSR law, making CSR contributions possible to be accepted to energize and further fuel the sporting ecosystem of India. I would request Vidushpat to shed more light on this.
Thanks, Vivek. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, ma'am, and thank you for coming for the Sportscom AGM. Thank you, Viren Gupta ji. Thank you, Vimal Anand sir, for coming over. And this is an issue, ma'am, I know that has been close to you and to your heart as well. Corporate social, ma'am, worldwide, sport is really fueled by the private sector, because private sector comes across, and we were discussing with Vivek in the morning, that most of the say income in the Olympics in US is basically coming from private sector. The government is maybe only contributing to a minor extent. But in India, what's happening is most of the contribution is coming from the government, and the private sector is contributing to a very small extent. And maybe we want to change this equation a bit with more participation of the private sector into the sporting field. Now, that will come slowly and steadily. But one of the initiatives that can be, which can spur the private sector to be a part of more sporting expenditures and more spends, would be amendment in the CSR perspective. Now, currently, the total contribution of CSR across the platform is about 25,897 crores. But what is coming, the CSR budget that is coming into sports is only 287 crores, which is only 1.25% of the entire pie. Now, if we look at why that is happening, and this, we've evaluated why this is happening. We believe that this is happening because Schedule 7 currently says the sports CSR in sports can be only for the purposes of training to promote rural sports, national recognized sports, Paralympic sports, and Olympic sports. So that is the current definition under which only sports in CSR initiatives can be taken up by companies in the sporting sector. What is key, ma'am, is that tournaments, competitions are essentially a part of training in sports. The perspective that we feel the department may be coming at is that these are really sectors where there is a commercial gain, or where necessarily this is not really a fund that the corporate is giving for development of sport. This is something that they're giving as a initiative or trying to get brand value out of it. But that may not always be the case, because in sports, tournaments are places where your training actually comes into perspective. You are then able to compete with your fellows and able to develop your talent more, able to hone your temperament. Now, that's essentially a very, very core area of training in sports as well. And that is something that is currently missing from the ambit of CSR in sports. So our request is that tournaments, the training definition can be expanded to include tournaments as well. Maybe there can be a restriction to tournament, not the commercial tournaments, but at least the tournaments which are for the purposes of which are sanctioned tournaments by the government or by the recognized sports bodies like national sport federations or the state sport federations or district federations. Those can be included within the purview of the CSR. And that would really expand, that will spur the corporates to put in money. Maybe they get some brand value out of it. Maybe they derive it. But at least more and more money will come into sports, and that will eventually spur the investment into sports. The second minor comment is, now there are community development activities which take place. So suppose some activities taking place for purposes of street children. There's some activity taking place for, say, in a colony where there's a lot of HIV, or for the sex workers. So if you actually take those initiatives or those activities that are taking place as well, worldwide it is seen that when there are community development activities or sport activities that take place, that reduces the crime as well as takes the people away from, they are able to productively utilize their mind space more. And that currently is also not included within the CSR perspective. So maybe this could also, the definition of CSR could be expanded to include this as well. We believe, ma'am, with these two small changes, at least the CSR fund or private would really come in far more than the current 1.2%. Even if we are able to double it, it is another 200, 250 crores, which is essential money getting into sports, which will really be a game changer for the sporting industry. At least we will be able to facilitate the government efforts. And I think that's a small request on the CSR aspect, ma'am.
In terms of my response to this, as you know, we have been talking about it and working on it since the beginning. He's aware. He has helped me out with some advice earlier, informally. And we have formally taken it up with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And I am under the impression that they are revising some guidelines, isn't it, Vimal? So they are revising some guidelines. That process was on at least a couple of months ago, and we had sent our suggestions to them formally, and there are some people working on it.
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's okay. Secretary ma'am has already written a letter to the Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and in fact, including all these points, tournaments and all. And I personally also met the Secretary of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and their line of argument is that though it's a very small cryptic line has been written about sport in Schedule 7, but they insist that they have already issued FAQs earlier, and that they should be the subjects that have been included in Schedule 7 should be interpreted in a very broad manner. So in reply to this, so they are saying is that all these are already included, inherent in the mention in Schedule 7. But then I insisted that when any officer of any particular company looks at Schedule 7, he wants to invest in sports, and but then he looks at Schedule 7 and he finds that particular area where the interest lies of the corporate missing. In that case, they just refuse the person who is approaching them. So there should be there should be some kind of an unambiguous reference. So they have promised that they will look into it, and they will sort of try to broaden the ambit and put up some general omnibus clause, which will open it up for all kinds of support to the sports sector. So very soon we are expecting some change in Schedule 7.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. I think that's a request, and I think the industry will be very happy that you actually taken
We
this
have
up.
formally done it, and we are very keen that if there is any clarification required, then that also should be, because if somebody goes and says this means this, then a lot of the ecosystem would not accept it. It's not like I can explain something, and the way things work, where it's all very definite and concrete, especially if you are giving funds and all, nobody would like any ambiguity in it that we interpreted it like this and somebody interpreted it like that. That doesn't work. So we will pursue it with them, and let us write to them again and let us pursue it further again. In fact, they are in the process, so I was hopeful that with our interventions, they had in fact met.
I met them recently, ma'am. I met the secretary very
It's
recently.
been going on for a couple of months. We are actively pursuing it, and let me also tell the audience that our Honorable Minister, Mr. Thakur, is very keen on it. He has been talking to, I think he would have even spoken wherever he can, to make sure that this kind of clarity is brought about. He himself is very keen on this particular item. So that gives us a lot of confidence that it's being taken in the right spirit by those people. Yeah,
Ma'am,
next.
about the RCM that Mr. Singh earlier referred to, you have already written to the Department of Revenue, but so far, the argument that you have already put up on the screen, that is their line of argument. But I would suggest, and I've already talked to some people in Sportscom also, the pre-budgetary exercise is coming up. It's going to start soon, or I think it may have already started, or I'm not sure whether there will be a vote on account or budget next year, but then the budgetary exercise would be starting anytime soon. So that is the best time to approach the Department of Revenue and put up your proposal. If ma'am agrees, we can write an introductory letter also.
Please send me the papers
and
from
then,
this conference, this session, and then we'll take it. By the way, for information of people here, Vimal himself is an income tax commissioner. He is on deputation to Department of Sports. So he knows what he's talking about. Okay, what is the next one?
So, ma'am, just to add to what, first of all, delighted to hear what Vimalji said, and thank you, ma'am, for your guidance. It wouldn't have been possible without it. But the CSR aspect could really be a game changer, like my colleague Vidushpat said, and it should be very expansive because I tell you, being in sports promotion for 35 years now, unless you're sponsoring something at the international level, which is fine, otherwise there is the return on investment is not commensurate. We have to do it through CSR. Even if it's a national level tournament and there is sponsorship, it is very, it sounds like there is return. So it should be a broad scope, and Sportscom is happy as our industry body to help in any way that we can assist the department or the Ministry of Corporate Affairs when they are deliberating this point, Vimalji. With that heartening note, we move on, ma'am. Making Indian sports goods manufacturing sector Atmanirbhar. And I think Neeraj ji would have more to say on this as a leading light of this industry. I request Neeraj ji to shed more light before ma'am and her team can reciprocate. Neeraj ji, would you like to come up? You're most welcome.
It's okay. Good afternoon, ma'am, and member of on the dais, and all the members present. We represent the sporting good manufacturing here, and we've put up our points earlier also, and
So you would know what work I'm doing on this issue.
Yes, and one of them was that how to get recognition for the brands what we are doing locally over here, and how could we increase our space, our scale by doing smaller things and promoting our brand, and in terms taking our quality levels higher in terms of their certifications, and how that could be possible. So we've put our point last time as well, and some work I presume has been done, and
No, we have done a lot of pioneering work in this, if I can use that word.
yes, and we'd like to hear from
So basically
you on that, ma'am.
what you had said was, and what the problem which was flagged to me as soon as I got a briefing about the department in 2021, was that under the scheme of things right now, we do not have a single government or any other laboratory which is recognized for testing of diet supplements, which is a huge gap. And therefore, in terms of the WADA list of prohibited substances and all, we are suffering from non-standard things being out there, and that is not good for our children and the people who want to play serious sport. So we have been able to, with the help of the National Sports Development Fund that we have, set up 2 collaborations with very eminent labs. One is the National Forensic Science University in Ahmedabad. They are now at an advanced stage of setting up the lab for testing of dietary supplements. And I'm expecting that by early 2024, they would start doing the testing. And the second that we have done is this National Institute of, what is the short form, what is it called? NIPER. National Institute of Pharma, it's a pharmaceutical education and research. That NIPER is at Hyderabad. So NIPER and NFSU are the 2 institutions with whom we have now an MOU. We have funded both of them for setting up a specialist lab. And we have a tripartite tie-up with FSSAI, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, because the FSSAI is the custodian of the rules in this regard. The rules have already been notified in early 2022. But it was a case of a bullock cart without wheels, because the rules were notified without a lab being in place. So what we did is we put the labs in place, and the labs are specialist labs, so they will have to have their equipment and whatnot. We have funded them from NSDF. And I am happy to say that this is one of the things that I personally feel very happy about. This is one of those personal, goals that you set sometimes in our kind of jobs. So this is going to make the whole system very different. We will have a protocol for testing all dietary supplements used for sports. We will have a process for making sure that it is not caught up in red tape, because every time you start something new, it can end up in red tape, and people might say कि ये क्यों किया, पहले ही better था. I will ensure that it doesn't go there, and hopefully by next year we'll have the first batches of testing in place, and everybody is on board. So that is a very good thing that I think is coming up. And if we are a serious player in sports, if we have aspirations to have big international events in India, which we are increasingly looking at, then we cannot have an ecosystem which has such basic weaknesses. And if I went to Patiala as soon as I joined, and I couldn't go again, I have to go. As soon as you go to those places, there's a whole bunch of shops selling, all kinds of over-the-counter medicines, and that's where the problem starts. So this is a very difficult area. This doping and everything is a difficult area, and I am happy that we have made some substantial and significant progress. So you guys are also a part of the whole ecosystem. So I would encourage you to help us to come up with some good SOPs. When we come to that point where the testing SOPs have to be put in place, apart from the technical side of things which we can't change, I would consult people from your group to tell us what would be easy for you to do and how it can be done, so that your ability to produce dietary supplements and give standard dietary supplements is not affected. I mean, like I said, I worry that if we set up too many things and processes, then it stops the whole thing. So I will try and make sure that we consult you before we actually roll out the whole thing. So that is something I'm happy to report.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This is something that Sportscom will be asking, and as most times when I'm representing the athletes as an anti-doping lawyer, this is one of the challenges that we've faced. And Prasanna, one of the cases that we ended up dealing with, Prasanna was kind enough that we had to actually send the supplement for testing to US, and that and the athlete had to incur fair amount of cost at that point of time. Fortunately, because the supplement testing yielded the result which the athlete was asserting, we were successful in the World Court of Sports. And that is something now, because that time we had to do it in US, and now fortunately we are able to do testing in India. The Indian athletes will face less challenges. The second thing which will come in is just now a lot of the elite athletes that come to us, they also come and tell us that we need supplements, because world over people are taking supplements. We need supplements to excel. Dietary requirements sometimes cannot only fulfill all the needs of a sports person, and therefore they say yes, while World Anti-Doping Agency says that you should not take supplement, or you're taking it at your own risk, we need some kind of a backing or a help, and that's a very, very core and a small area which really helps in athlete excelling, and this kind of a testing would really help the athletes excel. Prasanna, would you like to say something?
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have been interacting with you since you have joined the office, and we have given the presentation about drug-free supplement policy. And we are extremely happy for your help and support, and not only giving us encouragement, but making the things possible, because we have been pioneer as Nutra Supplements, working with US company for last 10 years, and we have been shedding thousands of dollars for getting these supplements testing. Me as a person and we as a Sportscom are very thankful for the support that government under your expertise is taking place. Yes, as you rightly said, we are pioneer in doing this testing, and we can help, and we can, whatever the guidance or the expertise that we have gained in last 10-15 years, we will be more than happy to be the part of this testing. We can send our samples to the lab. During the last NADA conference, I was there. We interacted with the lab people also. As we as an industry are ready to support, we can supply the supplements, and we will give the technical support also, how these US labs has been working. SOBs, we can arrange their visits, and we can have the technical MOUs if it is needed in that place, if you don't have the standard MOUs, SOPs in that place. Right? Because testing of supplements for 500 elements is a task. Every element needs to be tested, and WADA is updating on a year-on-year basis. So we need to have some technical tie-ups with the labs which has been acquainted this expertise. There are only 5-7 labs in the world. And if we have 2 such labs, I think this will be a great movement for Indian sporting industry, and it will help our Indian athlete and we as an industry to test these supplements. Thank you once again, ma'am, and we are all there to support. Thank you.
Ma'am, our last point is industry status to sports, which would facilitate many, many things, including finance and the formal banking sector and others to lend and give us things. And, you know, I'll just quickly go through these points. Our Vice President Udit Sheth has been very, very keen on this. He's done a lot of work as well on this, ma'am. But whether it's fiscal incentives, foreign direct investment, long-term availability of credit, there are many aspects that would come into play if industry status is given to sports. So I would request you to consider that, and we are happy to engage with you on that in any way that's possible. In deference to the time that we have, I would open this floor up for members online in presence here to ask Secretary Sports any questions. And Mukul, please, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivek sir. First of all, good afternoon, ma'am, Gupta Saab, and people on the dais, and Vimal Anandji and my fellow colleagues from the industry. Ma'am, I'm from Jalandhar. And I run a sports company, ma'am. For last 40 years, my father established that, and we are primarily into exports of sporting goods, ma'am. What I have witnessed over the past 1 decade is that, ma'am, there's a change in the winds now. You know, people from China and Pakistan and Vietnam are considering India as the next manufacturing hub for the world, ma'am, because what we have seen in the past 3 years has changed the scenario how we saw China earlier. You know, US people, Japanese people, German people, Australian people are trying to pull out their manufacturing hubs, and they're trying to find an alternate, ma'am. And you will be also pleased to know that, ma'am, the industry of sports, as far as exports are concerned, ma'am, it almost grew by 38% year on year, ma'am, for the last 2 years. So that's a phenomenal jump in where we were and where we are now. So there are some basic points, ma'am, that if we can, you know, consider them. One of that was what Mr. Neeraj Jain was saying, ma'am. Ma'am, I just like to give a small example. Ma'am, our neighboring country, Pakistan, has got an export of approximately $700 million, ma'am, of worth footballs only. So that is around 5,600 crores, ma'am, in terms of rupee terms, if I talk of today. So, ma'am, our exports is only 2,500 crores, if I total everything, sum of everything, ma'am. The sky is unlimited for us to grow, ma'am. The global market was valued at 100 billion 2 years back, ma'am, by KPMG. Ma'am, that's a global figure. And exporting 200 million, 300 million is peanut, ma'am, in front of that. Ma'am, we need to get more of the serious brands to India, ma'am, if we want to really increase the manufacturing base, ma'am. Top brands are not buying from India, that's a fact. The reasons can be n number of reasons, but if we try to pen them down and try to slash them one by one, ma'am, trust me, we can get top brands to buy from India, and our exports will surge, the employment will increase, ma'am. We can pay you more taxes also. So this is something which we can all consider, ma'am. And secondly, ma'am, just like to update that sports industry depends upon the raw materials which we buy from abroad, primarily from China, from Taiwan, from Japan, from Vietnam, maybe from Cambodia, wherever we try to find the best material, ma'am, we import. Top brands buy top products, ma'am. They want almonds at the price of peanuts. That's a fact. So we have to, either we develop those materials in India so that we save on the freight and the duty, or we try to find an alternate manufacturer who can supply to us at a very competitive price, ma'am. So in long-term vision, ma'am, we must have those plants like DuPont is there, Bayer is there, ma'am, Cargill Dow is there, ma'am. Let's have tie-up with those companies and set up their base in India. They make in India, they make for us, they export to the world, and we get the raw materials at a very economical price so that we are able to compete in the international market, ma'am. These are 2-3 points, ma'am. And thirdly, ma'am, as Mr. Singh has said, we need industry status, ma'am. I was fortunate enough to meet Mr. Anurag Thakur. He was in Jalandhar, ma'am, in the month of May. I met him 3 times in 3 days, ma'am. He came to a plant also, one of my colleagues' plants. So we had a very informal discussion, ma'am. And Mr. Thakur is very, very keen. He's himself a sports person, and he's got all his, good feelings, good intentions for this industry, ma'am. If need be, ma'am, we can all have a collective meeting through Sportscom at one given point of time, and we can, address all our issues, ma'am. Industry does want to grow. It has grown. Just need a little bit of support from your side, ma'am, and it can do wonders, ma'am. Thank you.
Mukulji's passion comes through very well, and He has been a stalwart member of our Sportscom, ma'am. Mukulji, thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, please. Please introduce yourself and then please ask.
Sure. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Abhishek Binakia, partner at Grant Thornton. We're a knowledge partner for CII. The Olympics 2036 is the next big ambitious project of the government of India, right? The decision for granting of the city, our bid obviously will be from Ahmedabad, will be in a few years. What key initiatives is the government driving to build credibility for our resume, if I may, for making sure that we have the best possible chance to have a good shot at winning that bid?
That is not a question that I can answer right away at this point. And just like we have been talking since the time that I arrived here, there are many things that improve the health of sport in a country, including the issue of getting more corporate funding, getting these drug-free supplements under control, strengthening our own agencies, which is NADA and the lab and everything. All these things contribute to the larger image that a country has in sports. So, as Government of India, we are looking very closely at elite sport. If you look at the arrangement in terms of the Constitution of India, the subject of sport is allotted to states. You are aware that there's a state list, a union list, and a concurrent list. So the subject of sport per se is listed in the state list. So the grassroots work and the work that needs to be done in a state in terms of development and infrastructure is the primary job of the state governments. So that kind of effort is made at the state level, and Government of India looks at the international engagements. So we are looking at everything right now. So it is very difficult to pinpoint one thing and say that this is what is being done. And if we do well in sports in terms of our ability to do well at every event that we go to, that increases the heft you have generally. Ultimately, you're all business people here, so you know that if you have your own success and heft, then you can do better. So that's a principle of life. So India perhaps was not being taken seriously for sports earlier. But lately you notice, and I again emphasize my point, that if you look at the kind of diverse medals that we are getting across the year, we have kids going to events which my friends tell me, they had never heard of India defeating Chinese Taipei in volleyball. We did that. Whoever had heard of the Indian team defeating Korea in volleyball, they defeated 2 teams and then they hit against Japan, I think. So Japan is too hard, so they lost. It's okay. So we're doing a lot of these things. We have Bhavani Devi who won in fencing. We never heard of a medal in fencing for India. So if you are working at all these levels, then you are improving your ability to look serious about sports. That is my immediate response.
Thank you.
Our Vice President, ma'am, Udit Sheth would like to ask something. Udit, over to you.
Thank you, Vivek, and thank you, ma'am, for being part of the annual general meeting of Sportscom. One of the very prominent points that Vivek presented on our behalf was giving some industry status to sports as an industry. And as a body, one of the most important things that we've wanted to do is to create more visibility and more investment into the sector and encourage global as well as national entrepreneurs to invest in this sector. If we emulate the film and entertainment industry, they were given a 10-year window to actually develop their industry and their sector. And a lot of SOPs were given in terms of encouragement, whether it was in terms of tax, whether it was in terms of production-linked incentives. Right now, also, India has put taxes on foreign IT goods so that our Make in India program succeeds in sports. I mean, in the IT sector. So somewhere along the line, with us as a sector which is looking at an Olympic vision of India, it's important to have a kind of an industry policy which can be put together which can be then ratified by the ministry and help us in actually gaining Indian sport goods manufacturers and also other investment in the infrastructure sector, as well as financing and so on and so forth, to actually get a big amount of boost. So we as Sportscom request that the ministry works with us to actually create a conducive environment, and we can make a kind of a 10-year sunrise sector appeal to you. And that would go a long way for Indian industry to actually pick up the sports as an industry as well, because we are one of those sectors which is an equal employment opportunity, and that can become a great GDP contributor towards the development of our $5 trillion economy program. So our request is that please guide us on how we can create a sunrise sector out of the sports industry. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Udit. You're all very lucky to have the Secretary DPIIT walking in as you were speaking. He's a very old friend and batchmate of mine, Mr. R.K. Singh. This is time for me to exit and for him to start his interaction with you all. As you know, the idea that sports can be an industry and sports industry related issues need to be looked at by the Department of Sports. I have mentioned that there are some limitations, and he will be able to appreciate some of these things better because he has the entire picture. So the rest of the queries he can perhaps look at. And in terms of what we discussed so far, I take back whatever your feedback has come and I will work on it. As I have mentioned, I've started working on each of the points and hope to see good progress in the coming days. So I think I have had a very good interaction with all of you. I thank you all, and we'll keep in touch. We keep engaging on various things. So thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you so much. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am. I request our Secretary Rishikesh to say a few words as his vote of thanks before you. Yes, of course, ma'am. We will just to you for your time that you have given us, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Secretary ma'am. It's been an honor and a pleasure to listen to you. I think what I make out of this on a personal level is that, we are all fighting a freedom struggle, but the best part is there is no opposition. We are all together in this fight for India to do well, right, across sectors and across industry when it comes to sports. So thank you so much, ma'am. You give us all the motivation to work even harder. Thank you so much for having us.
As a token of appreciation for our chief guest, may I request Mr. Vivek Singh to kindly present the memento to ma'am. Everybody please close. A round of applause.
And I must tell you something, when we had an army attachment 34 years ago, he was one of the only two guys who were qualified by the military standards. Really wonderful. See you then.
See you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
This brings us to the end of this session, and we will be beginning with the next special